Bienvenidos, everyone. Welcome. Before we begin, I want to remind all the attendees to please sign into the link provided in the chat by Jamie. If you have any issues, please make sure to direct message her. If you have any questions during the course of the presentation, please direct them to Kevin, and he has changed his name to questions, and he will address them at the conclusion of the presentation during the Q&A portion. Also, a short survey will be shared in the chat by Jamie toward the end of the event, so please take a couple minutes to complete this survey for us before you head out. We have Asl Interpretation services by Carlos and closed captioning provided by Anabel. You can enable closed captioning by selecting live transcript and enabling captions. Thank you both for being here. Lastly, this is a reminder that this event will be recorded, so please adjust your settings to your preference. Before I introduce today's speaker, I want to offer a land acknowledgement on behalf of the Planning Committee. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to making the history that led to this moment. Some were brought here against their will. Some were drawn to leave their distant homes in hope of a better life. And some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We are currently occupying ancestral land of the Tongva people. In our work to promote social justice and education, we must always consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. With that being said, I'd like to welcome you all to this evening's presentation for Latinx Heritage Month. This is Glendale Community College's second year observing Latinx Heritage Month, and our theme for this year is celebrating our diverse stories, voices, and identities. The Planning Committee selected this theme to celebrate the unique individuals within the Latinx community, despite the various challenges they have faced in this country. Lastly, it is an honor to introduce Antonio Castellanos. Antonio is a 33-year-old gay man from Southern California who mostly grew up in San Marcos, California, which is north of San Diego. He currently lives with his partner of 6 years in the Castro neighborhood of San Francisco. His life experience has led him to create the game called Joteria, which is an educational loteria that reflects Mexico's lesbian, gay, and trans population. Joteria focuses on visibility, identity, history, and family. For those of you who have never seen the game, I have a handy dandy version of it, which Antonio has told me is no longer running, meaning these are the only copies available. But Antonio did let me know that there will be a fun element to today's event. After the Q&A portion of this presentation, we will actually be holding a raffle of some of Antonio's Joteria art. So during Antonio's presentation today, you'll be learning about queer terms, and Antonio will make sure to quiz you at the end of the presentation. Whoever is able to answer correctly will be able to win some art, and that will be mailed to you if you win. So just if you didn't have any other motivation to pay attention to today, there is a raffle and you can win some very cool items that are limited edition and made by the one and only Antonio. So with that being said, I would like to welcome Antonio to today's event.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you everybody for coming. Great intro. I just want to know a little bit like who exactly I'm talking to. So if you can put a marker if you are bilingual, so I can know. Anthony, right here, Jamie. Okay. And of course, bilingual in English and Spanish. Okay, okay. Raise your hand if only English. Okay, Michael, Becca, Ariel. Okay, ¿y algunos de ustedes solamente hablan español? Name. I'm not even sure if I can see everybody. Okay, so it seems like majority English crowd, a little bilingual. Okay, yeah, so that way I know how to speak to you guys. Okay, so my name is Antonio. I created an educational board game called Joteria. It's based off of Mexico's Loteria game, which means lottery. Loteria was created about 100 years ago in Mexico, right after right after the revolution. Right? The reason why, so you guys know bingo, right? Loteria is Mexico's bingo game. You get a deck, you get a card in front of you. There's 16 characters in front of it. The characters are an item, a person, a food, an animal. So the person calling the cards is like the watermelon, the bird, the tree, right? And you're marking your characters. And it's become super popular in Mexico, so much so that people tattoo themselves with the original art. They get married in decoration with the original art. They'll decorate their houses, t-shirts, restaurants, you name it, it's everywhere. You have a Bible, you have a Loteria game, you know? It's everywhere. So it's spread from Mexico everywhere, north, south. The inspiration of Loteria came from an Italian game that they played during Christmas. I believe it's called Tobola. Don't quote me on that, but it comes from there. And it became really popular because 100 years ago a war had just ended. Men got together to fight, and then they learned this game and took it home to their families. So today, people play Loteria, not like bingo, the culture's different. Bingo is known for like the elderly community at a place far away that they go play. Loteria is played at home in the family unit. It's a great way to learn how to speak words, like for little kids, like this is how you say cello, or this is how you say this kind of bird, or just items, right? You just learn as you play, particularly when you're little. And so, yeah, so all generations play, grandparents, their children, all the way, whoever's in the house plays. You can play for money, you can play for beans, you can play for whatever, just bragging rights, it doesn't matter. And so I'm 33 years old. When I was 25, I was hanging out with my mom in San Marcos, where I'm from, in Southern California, and she was cooking and I was hanging out with her, and there is a character called El Catrín, the dapper one, in the original deck. And it was like a bootleg version of it, and it was hanging out by itself on the counter, and I picked it up and I thought, he looks so gay. You know, how did I not notice that this guy, he just looks really gay. Se ve muy joto, I thought. And so I took a photo of it, and I edited it, and I put El Joto, and I put it on Facebook, and people laughed. And I thought, like, wouldn't it be cool if there was a Loteria game that had gay characters in it? And it was just an idea. It was just an idea. Nothing happened. You know, I was busy. I was in school. I was dating. I was living life, not worried about like a business or a education or anything, nothing. It wasn't until a year and a half later that I lost my job. I lost my car. I was living in San Marcos, and it's impossible to live there without a car. I couldn't find work, months and months of just not finding work, just down on my luck economically. And I decided to move to San Diego with this guy that I knew, not necessarily a friend, an acquaintance. He was looking for roommates. Turned out he was a terrible roommate. And one day I was on a bus heading to this place that I was living in. I just was dreading going there. And I was like, well, I have nothing to lose. I'm just gonna start writing down my ideas about what this game is gonna be. I didn't even have a name for it yet. So out of necessity, to get out of my situation, I created this game. At the beginning, it was I knew nothing about business, nothing about self-development, nothing about shit, nothing about the broader lesbian, gay, trans, bisexual, intersex, allies, queer people, non-binary people. I just didn't know. I only knew my own experience and some gay friends' experiences, but that was basically it. And this forced me to learn more, to ask questions, to learn more about business, to learn more about self-development. All of these things that I mentioned, I had to throw myself into it. And about 2.5 years later, 3 years, I think it took me to finish it, print it, have it in my hands. And it was a great moment that day when I had it in my hands. I wanted to share with the whole world. And I did. I had launch events, and it was wonderful. And I quickly realized that I messed up a lot. I learned a lot more about our population. I don't like to say community. I say population because a community is a small group of people. Population, we're everywhere. It's a huge population, lots of different stories, walks of lives. And when I launched it, a lot more people were attracted to me. I was exposed to lots of people. Never have that ever happened to me before. I never met so many people at one given time. Never had people looking for me for anything, And so I quickly learned that I didn't nail it. It was good concept and everything. People are still happy with it today. But, working into it, I eventually found myself hating my own creation because it didn't reflect everything that I had now learned, right? My arts got better, my photography got better, my storytelling got better. So just an example, just a small example. So earlier I told you guys that Loteria has a lot of items, right? So then I decided to do items. And some of these items, they just embarrass me today, Let me show. Let's see. Okay, so here's one. Here's one that has a little story. So I decided to put the red ribbon for HIV awareness, right? I was born in 1988. Lots of people are surviving HIV when I'm born. So they want to hammer it into the younger people, my generation, how to be careful from HIV, right? So then this is how I'm learning to be gay. And so then I put it in my game, right? But I realized that people are taking the game for face value. So I realized that people were not reading the history of it. They're not reading anything about like how this came to be, which came with my book in the game. And basically, if people are taking it for face value, this means that faggots have AIDS when they're playing Joteria. Jotos tienen SIDA is basically the unintended message that I gave with this game. Instead of spreading awareness about it and trying to destigmatize the unintended consequence of people like not reading. So this is what you play with, right? And you're like going and you're calling them out. And so that's how it happened, right? So I was like, okay, that's just one of the things. There's many of them, right? So I wanted to do genitalia, right? Like the eggplant or like the emojis, right, that we're using. And so I just, they're not powerful. I realized very quickly that people are not drawn to the items. Here's one. So we're going to talk about this item. In Mexico, this is a puñal, means dagger. And in Mexico, to call somebody a dagger is equivalent to calling somebody a faggot. It's like a very negatively charged, super hateful term. But why? Why is a dagger? How did we get here? Why not a pencil? A knife. So through Joteria, I had to go out there and investigate I have a gay cousin in Guadalajara, which is where my family's from. And I wanted to know what Mexicans were saying. I didn't want to reflect Chicanos, the Mexican American experience. I wanted to reflect Mexico. So then I went to my cousin, um, and I just wanted to hang out with him and his friends. What are they saying? We're missing, like, we're not on the ground there, so we're missing on like all the zeitgeist, I guess, that they're talking about. Um, and so one of the I went twice, and one of the trips I met somebody, and I told him what I was doing there. I was doing field research, and he was like, "Oh, you have to read this book called Los Jotos." So I come home, look up the book Los Jotos. It's not available. I find the author on Facebook, and I'm like, "Hey," his name is Jaime. I'm like, "Jaime, I'm Antonio. This is what I'm doing. I heard you got a book." He liked my idea, and he's like, "There's no books available. However, here's a PDF version. Have fun," you know? So then I learned a ton. So this guy spent at the time 19 years going through any printed archive that he can get his hands on, newspapers, articles, television print, movie print, whatever, anything that has any sort of queer reference to it, he collects it. And today he has this warehouse full of like tons of gay print, queer print. And so through one of his investigations, through one of his findings, he found the origin of why we say this, which is not a popular story. And it's really interesting. So in the late 1800s, in 1880 to be specific, there was this guy in Guadalajara who would write about the gastronomy in the city, where you can get tortas, where you can get tamales, where you can get sopes, whatever. And at the time, he noticed that there was a group of men who dressed like women, he wrote. So these were probably trans women. And with them, they would have puñales, daggers. And he wrote that in the bucket of tamales that they would store their puñal there for protection. Well, he didn't write for protection, but it clearly, I'm sure they were using it for protection. The details of the story are that these group of trans women were not wanted in the plaza where they sold tortas, and they weren't wanted in the big market where they also sold tortas. And in between these two popular places, there was a bridge, not connecting the places. They were a few blocks away, but they occupied this bridge and started selling tamales. And within they had puñales, and they wrote, and he wrote that la gente decía, ¿irás con los puñales a recoger tamales? Are you going to go with the daggers to pick up tamales? They became los puñales. This newspaper spread out through the city. It became part of the vocabulary. Eventually, this group of people disappeared, but the term stayed in the vocabulary of the Mexican, and now we're puñales, which is crazy. So that's what I do now. That's what I do with this game. So just to show you the evolution, I had to move. This is my bedroom. Earlier I was in my office, and so now all my paperwork are my paper's a little jumbled up. Just a second, I want to show you guys the evolution for the second edition. So this is the first edition, and I want to show you guys unpublished, unreleased art. I'm 5 characters away from being done with this new edition, which is a lot more family friendly, a lot easier to share with your conservative aunts, you know. So I wanted to be more historically accurate. And so I decided to find 3 people, people born and assigned male, and they live somewhere in the middle of queerness, right? So I wanted to do the buckets, 3 people, a group, and puñales. See how they're holding daggers? Boom. So this is now the new puñal, and it tells a much longer, better story than this, because people are taking it for face value. You know, this didn't really work, but there's a whole story here to read. There's a lot more to read here. So that's where I'm at. That's my evolution of Joteria. I'm going to tell you guys a really sad one. Really, really sad. I hate sharing it, and it always bums the whole group out. when I do, but I think it's also really interesting and important. So hold on. ¿Dónde está? Here. Okay. My first take on la mariposa. In Mexico and in Latin America and in Spain, you can call somebody a butterfly and you're calling them gay. It's not as hateful as Joto or Puñal. And this was my first take, right? La mariposa, a butterfly, wonderful. It's in a game called Joteria, one gets it. However, if you see this card somewhere else in the world, it's not gay at all. So the story is, oh God. Okay, the Spanish Inquisition. If you're not aware of what the Spanish Inquisition was, they were basically the Catholic police of Spain. Spain was super proud that they just got the Muslim Moors out of Europe, who was occupying them for 500 years. So the Spanish were like super proud and Catholic. And there was this guy, his name was Tomás Torquemada, who convinced the crown. The crown that was there, the crown that gave Christopher Columbus those 3 ships, he convinced them to create this police force, La Inquisición. And supposedly this guy would describe effeminate men like butterflies because he noticed that butterflies or moths were attracted to the flame until they were completely burnt. The Catholic police, the inquisitors, are famous for torture devices, bloody gut stuff, really, really terrible, terrible things. And that's like a whole other topic, but they were brutal. They were brutal to women. They were brutal to queers. They were brutal to Muslims and Jews. It was really scary, and it lasted like 350 years. And he would describe men as butterflies, right? Because they were completely, sorry, let me backtrack. So the moth or the butterfly would be attracted to the flame, right? And he would describe effeminate men that kept coming back to trial for whatever wrong they were doing. He would describe them like butterflies because they kept coming back. So they were to burn like butterflies. So this is my new take on La Mariposa. I had to be careful and I'm making it terrible, right? So this is kind of paying homage to the people that were lost during this time. So I went from Mariposa to Mariposa. A person that you can see, a person that you can relate with, a person that probably looks like somebody you know, right? And all of these people are people that I take photos of and create into an illustration. And I think we did a good job with this one, Boom. That one's cool. Okay, that one's the worst one. Another one. In Mexico, the number 41 is literally means gay. So much so that I see you, Ariel. The number 41 is associated with homosexuality in Mexico. So much so that men, when they are the age of 41, they avoid telling their age. They either say that they're 40 or that they're 42. Because if they tell people that they're 41, then it's open season for jokes, right? But why? Why? This is another one of those like puñal. Why not 45, 17? Why 41? So the revolution 100 years ago just ended, right? 1920. Why was there a revolution? Because there was a dictator. The dictator's name was Porfirio Diaz. And he's like this controversial figure. And one end, he lifted Mexico out of like extreme poverty, but then he also put Mexico back into extreme poverty by making everybody indentured servants all over the country and not being able to make enough money to get out of their farms where they were working. So he became a dictator, right? Porfirio Diaz. And he lived in Mexico City, opulent life. Everything was fabulous, beautiful. He erected lots of buildings. And it turns out that in this really elite Mexican party, they were having secret gay parties, right? In these mansions. And the story goes, disclaimer, we will never know the actual story. There are several versions of the story. We'll never know because one, how long ago it was, and second, because of all of the work that people did to be quiet about it. So it's 1901. 1901, Mexico City. Homosexuality is not illegal, but it's clandestine, meaning that like people don't know about it, people don't talk about it. It's behind you. It's not open. It's not even an open secret, really. It's just unaware, and it's super secretive, super secretive. So these elite men in Mexico City that are governing the country are having secret gay parties. And one of the stories goes that police, they were walking around and they noticed that a lot of elegant carriages were outside of this mansion. And so they go check it out. They want to go see what's going on. And when they knock, these guys open the doors and they are dressed in women's clothing. It's Victorian era, French clothing at the time is the shit. And the police were super offended. And so they raided the party. They got more guys. They totally raided the party illegally. And it turns out that they arrested 41 men. And they took them into custody. And this guy, Jose Posada, who was an illustrator for a newspaper at the time, he owned his newspaper press, and he got wind of the story. And the reason why we talk about it today is because on his newspaper, he wrote, Los 41 maricones, tan chulos y coquetones, the 41 fags, so cute and so, how do you say coqueton? I don't know, something cute. It's kind of cute. And so tons of people read this. It was super scandalous, super scandalous. It's Porfirio Diaz, the dictator, and his homies are having gay ass parties, right? And it went viral. It went viral as fuck. And the same thing happened. Eventually, time passed. People forgot the story. People forgot about the article, but the number stayed in the vocabulary to mean gay, to the point where men avoid saying their age 41. I don't know if this is true. I've heard that the Mexican military completely skips the number 41 whenever there's counts of anything. I don't know if that's true. I've never met a Mexican military person to confirm, but I've heard about that. So this is 41. This is my take on, it's actually based on the illustration that Jose Posada did on his newspaper. So it's just like clothing of the time, Baroque, that kind of stuff, So that's the 41. Interesting thing. So the newspapers, they needed to milk stories to sell more newspapers. So they created a character out of the 41. And Florindo Flores was a character that they came up with. Florindo Flores is like flowers and flowers, right? And supposedly they interviewed this Florindo Flores from these men that were arrested. And they would ask him, what is your name? And he wanted to hide his identity, so he kept answering with flowers. What is your first name? Florindo. What is your last name? Flores. What do you do? Oh, where do you live? I live in la calle de las Flores. I live on Flower Street. And what do you do? Vendo flores. I sell flowers. And so it was funny. It was comical. And today it's a light term. Sorry, today it's not a popular term. It was actually kind of popular, I think, in the 60s. I found music where people were using Florindo Flores as a character in song. And then they would get a guy to go, hola, yo soy Florindo Flores, like that. It's pretty funny. And so this is my take on Florindo Flores, coming from Los 41. And this is my Florindo Flores, he's being shh. So there's a rumor that there was actually 42 people that were arrested, And this 42nd person is rumored to be the son-in-law of the dictator himself, Porfirio Diaz. What? However, it's just a rumor. Earlier, I said that we'll never really know what happened. 41 people were arrested. Supposedly, the actual story was that 42 people were arrested, but that at the moment of revising these people, there was an actual woman in there who was the lady that kept the house, you know? And when she was let go, that was a moment for people to create a rumor. I forgot his name. For the son-in-law to be one of the gay ones. He may or may have been gay. I don't know. We'll never really know. If you guys are interested in knowing a little more or see a little more on Los 41 or the 41, there is a movie on Netflix called The Dance of the 41. Historically inaccurate, beautifully made. Do not watch it with kids. They unnecessarily made it. There's a scene in there that's like very pornographic. And I'm like, oh, you didn't need to do that. But it's still, I like the movie overall. So that's the 41. That's Florindo Flores, Netflix, Dance of the 41. ¿Cuál otra está buena? What other one is really good? Let's do some light ones. So in Mexico, to say gay, you can say, this is new art, unreleased art. Can you see it? It's le gusta chupar el arroz con popote. He likes to suck rice through a straw. It's playful. You don't say it when you're mad or anything. You can kind of get the gist of it, of like what you're sucking and what is coming out. So that's el arroz con popote. And I try to make this one like light because it's a light one, you know? Another crazy one is the one whose canoe turns into water. What? That literally means gay. His canoe, se le hace agua la canoa. His canoe turns into water. So in Spanish, like when you say like, I want to eat that, or like, oh my God, se me saborea. How do you say? Ay, se me olvida. My mouth is watering, you know? My mouth is watering because I want it. So you can imagine what canoa means in this case. So this is my take on que se le hace agua la canoa. I think it's being referenced to the butt, his, like your mouth waters, his butt waters. Gross, I don't know. I think so. That's just an assumption, and it's like a community assumption too. So that's my take on se le hace agua la canoa, which is not hateful. It's not even rude. It's funny. It's up to you how to take it, right? Another one also that is playful, play on words, is there's más o menos, the word, which means so-so. Oh, más o menos, it's okay. And then there's macho, so they combined más o menos with macho, so it goes macho menos. He's like kind of macho, you know? So this is my take on los macho menos. So this is like, it's kind of like this, and then they're wearing high heels. Los macho menos, you know? What was I gonna say earlier? I told you guys about Porfirio Diaz, the impact with art. So I've learned a lot about the impact of art and how to use it to convey a message, right? So like giving, I'll show you guys a better one. So in my first Joteria, I took pictures of people as they were, you know, wearing clothes like this, you know, and it's today, it's fine, it's what we look like. But I realized quickly that, so for example, this is a character that I made, the androgynous one, you know, it's okay, you know. However, I realized quickly that I had the idea, but I was scared to do it. The idea was to put a character into folklore clothing, right? And I was like, oh my God, I grew up in ballet folklorico. I danced it for 10 years, Mexican folklore dance. And I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna step on toes. I don't want to offend people by putting my characters into these traditional clothings, I was scared. And I was like, no, this is me. These are the clothes that I grew up wearing, performing in for many years. Why do I feel scared? So I made a character called La Transición, the transition. And this character inspired me to create the second edition of Joteria because I learned that people just loved it. People loved it. People connected with it. You may or may not even be trans, but you feel yourself in this. La transición, right? The transition. And one might feel attracted to it coming from Mexican culture because of what they're wearing. You may or may not have these clothes, right? They're kind of hard to come by. So, but like when I see this, I'm like, that's me, that's my people. This is what we wear, right? And I realize that people were identifying with these characters. So what I'm doing now, from this guy Los Jotos, the book that this guy collected over 300 terms of what people have said, have been called, or used today in Mexico to describe queer people. In his book, I found 300 terms. Today, to today's date, he's found over 500 terms, right? So I'm taking his findings. So I'm using the word Joto, for example, which named my game Joteria, faggotry. I take a word like Joto, and then I find people that I think will do well for the character, and then I put them into folklore clothing so that people understand where in the world they are. So, for example, el afeminado, the feminine one, or the effeminate one. And I decided to do charreria, right? So charreria is Mexico's national sport. So I can't wait to publish this and see what happens. So this is Mexico's national sport. This can be a dance or a sport. People kind of dance with the riata, the lasso. They make moves. Sometimes they're on horses. The horse is galloping. They're standing on the horse while they're doing this, and then they jump through the hoop that they make with the lasso, right? It's a whole thing. So I decided to do el afeminado. I picked a friend that I thought was good for it, and then we put them in these clothes, right? Let's see. Through this, we're gonna talk about Xochipilli. Through this second edition, I really had to go into. Oh, we only have a few minutes left. I really had to study on fashion, European fashion, Mesoamerican fashion, before colonization, after colonization. What were people wearing in Oaxaca versus what were people wearing in Zacatecas? What were people wearing in the 1770s versus 1890s? And so I really learned a lot about fashion, and along with Mesoamerican gods. So here's a take. It needs revision, but I thought this was so chic. This is a brand new character. And this is just something that they would adorn their heads with. And this is something that they would wear, right? And Machicuintla is a Nahuatl word. Nahuatl words that we speak in English are chipotle, chocolate, tomato, potato, I don't think so. Tomato, chocolate, coyote. Those are all Nahuatl words. And Machicuintla is a popular word is hermaphrodite, but the correct word is intersex. Biologically speaking, humans are actually not able to be hermaphrodite because they don't have two working sex genitalia. Usually one is more dominant than the other. But there are creatures in the world that are properly hermaphrodite, like snails, that have a working vagina and a working penis. They can't have sex with themselves, but they can have sex with any other snail because all of them have the same parts, which is pretty cool. And so this person lives in San Jose. I'm in San Francisco. And I met her, and she's very open about her anatomy. She's a woman, identifies as a woman, brought up as a girl, but she has testes inside of her body. And I asked her, she's Zapotec, she's from Oaxaca, and Nahual is more north. And I asked her, I was like, hey, Alexia, do you know the word Machicuintla? And she laughs and she's like, yeah, that's me. And I was like, would you like to model for it? And she's like, sure. She's like, I'm Zapotec, but I will do it, you know. And the reason why I chose to put fruit, you know, aguacate, supposedly that's Nahual, that's avocado. Supposedly in Nahual, avocado can also mean testicles. So just like balls for us, we can play with balls and we can play with balls, you know. So, and la papaya is a significance for vagina, and avocados are significance for a representation for testicles. So this is how I decided to do it. So anyways, that's Machicuintla. So Chipili is an Aztec gay god. Xochitl means flower, Pili means prince, right? And this was my first take on Xochipili. I later realized that I didn't study enough, and I actually mixed a lot of Mesoamerican gods. But Xochipili, just to let you guys know, Aztec gods, Mesoamerican gods, are a blend of good and bad. So like in the Christianity, there's good versus evil, God and the devil, right? And they don't mix, right? They're kind of clashing. But Mesoamerican gods are more reflective of how people are. We have our good and we have our bad. And Xochipili, his positives are flowers, poem, dance, beauty, games, youthfulness, the morning sun because it's the young part of the day. And negativity wise, it's sexuality, excess, superficiality, venereal disease, drugs, particularly mushrooms, and what else? I'm forgetting a couple. But yeah, so there's those are like the negative sides of prostitution, sex work, those are like on the negative sides, right? And the reason why we think he's gay, there's actually no evidence of that he's gay, but because he's in male form representing all those things, that sounds like all my friends, basically. So so this is my first take on Xochipili. I didn't know that I crossed a bunch of Mesoamerican gods. This is one different god. Each Mesoamerican god has different clothing, so you can identify them. So I put the god of spring without knowing, and then I put another god about duality. I made a mess of it. So then I got a teacher who taught me. So this is just a sketch. It's a lot about, it's gonna be very excess and very more colorful. And to me right now, this is really poor. He has no clothing on, barely. But now that I'm all studied up on Mesoamerican fashion, I'm like, oh no, that's not a good job. So he has a lot of jade and flowers and colors, and I'm not done sketching it, but a lot more feathers, different types of feathers. So this character is going to be all about the excess, all about being extra. You know, he has bells on him. He makes noise just when he walks around. And that's Xochipili. So we're only 10 minutes away, and I think we need to open it up to questions, right? Priscilla.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions? Our fabulous audience?
Any questions are valid.
And if not, I'm sure other people may have some of our own people working the event. But I know, Antonio, thank you for sharing so much of your art and kind of the explanations behind it. And even just the process itself, right? Which can be a learning experience too. As you're working to kind of publish your second version of it, you did mention how you have been learning a lot. What have those conversations looked like? Like, what have people come up to you and kind of made comments, or what has it been like after you after the first game was published and like what people's reactions were and how you took that criticism and kind of made the second game.
Yeah, good question. So the first mistake that I did was I didn't have focus groups, right? I didn't have focus groups. I wanted to keep it a secret. I was like, don't steal my idea. You know, that was my attitude back then. And then I launched it, and the launch became a focus group, you know. And little by little, I would just see people's reactions, how they behaved around it, when they would laugh, you know, when they would smile, when they would be like, whatever. That's how I mostly learned. I also learned how I felt. There was a character called Los Poppers. And Poppers is like, it's borderline drug. You buy it at a sex store to have sex. And it was in there, and it was very uncomfortable sharing it with younger people. Somebody sent me a photo of like little children playing the game, and I felt like, oh, like I didn't feel right. I didn't feel right about it. There was like a lot of characters that were like genitalia by fruit. And I was like, no, this doesn't feel right. I don't like this. So then that's what my evolution was like. Sometimes it was very deliberate. I would go to groups, particularly here in San Francisco. I went to a trans Latina group, and I shared the game, and they told me about their experiences so I can get to learn from them. Yeah, and how did I take it? It's hard to hear criticism. I hate it. But you have to learn and you know, say when you made a mistake and own it. And yeah, I saw that, Becca, you were gonna ask a question.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for your presentation. Also, like what you just said right now about, yeah, some people too, like, or it's easy to get really frustrated, you know, when your first draft isn't good, just in the artistic process, but some people just get stuck there and they don't move on, you know, so yeah, to be able to kind of recognize that and then make something really good is definitely like, it takes some persistence for sure to do that. Yeah.
Definitely persistence. And like, yeah, I just didn't want to give up on it. There's been moments where I just fuck this game, like it's so hard. It's been the most challenging thing I've ever done in my life. And yeah, just to be vulnerable and put myself out there and to learn from people. But I'm so happy you guys got to see art people don't see, you know. Let me just show you guys one more. This is one of my favorites. This one. So let's go like this. So it goes like this. And it's called La Obvia, the obvious one. Yes, Queen, look at her. Boom. So
can I ask about your research process though, just because it seems like you did so much research here? You know, was it like going into archives, like your friend's book, oral history, or I'm interested in that.
Everything. One, he was the biggest resource. So I recently talked to him, and he just wanted to share how he did it. He's actually, what he would do, he started in 1985. He was interested in what queer people had to offer in Mexican history, because we're not written about in textbooks, but we were clearly there. So he wanted to know what impact we've had. And so he started buying old newspapers and then just reading them, and hopefully something would come up. And so he started collecting them, collecting. The internet, you know, magic. It's like there's people out there that are putting up information. My most favorite place to look for was the internet. What was it? The Anthropology Museum of Mexico City. That I felt more secure, more accurate, right, more serious. And then like people online sharing their own findings, their own interpretations, their own drawings. YouTube saved me. Lots of people on there trying to share information on their own fashion, and I would look also at architecture. Architecture had a lot to do with my interpretation of silhouettes and drawings on people's clothing, and historical photos. I would just type in Mexico City 1880, and so much information would pop up, and like what the French thought of Mexico in the late 1800s, and their interpretations in drawing, and what else? Just history, like verbal history, just talking to people, all of these people that I took photos of, almost all of them, I had the opportunity to just sit down with them and talk about their experience, coming out, their parents, religion, coming out twice if they're trans, coming out several times, changing, or maybe not figuring themselves out yet. Bullying, not bullied, being the bully, all sorts of things. That was my process of looking for stuff. And it would take time. I can't even tell you, like, a lot of the stuff I didn't even save. And it was just finding somebody would maybe send me something. But yeah, it just took a long time to stumble onto things too on accident.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Antonio. So our last question before we move into the raffle is, obviously everybody wants to know, when is second edition coming out? For those who don't have the first edition, but also for those of us who do, after seeing this art, I can tell you I am very excited. So give us the details.
Well, one, please show yourself if you have heard of the game before today. Carlos. Okay, all newbies. Cool. I just, like, right before this, I was almost late. I was like, I have a drag. I'm not even sure. She might be still in the house. I have a drag queen in the house. We just shot La Draga, the drag queen. And she was in full face. I had 5 minutes to take the photo. This is like what I'm doing these days. She got in full drag, right? And I was like, hurry up, girl. I got this thing going on at 5, and we have 5 minutes. I'm texting Priscilla, I'm gonna be 5 minutes late. So I'm 4 characters away now. My last scheduled shoot is next Sunday. So 2 Sundays from this one, or sorry, just 2 Sundays from today. And then comes the revision. And we're gonna go over the characters again. I'm not an illustrator. These are not my illustrations. These are my photographs. My illustrator lives in Morelia, Michoacan in Mexico. I've been working with him for like 7 years. And so I send him my photos and he sends them back drawn in, you know? So it's a collaboration. And I hope to have it for Christmas. But who knows? Who knows? I haven't worked with this new printer. Who knows what their capacity is? Who knows what it's getting printed in Mexico City? What's gonna happen at the border? When is it gonna get here? Is it gonna get here a few weeks before Christmas so that people can order it? I don't know. Hopefully for Christmas, maybe next year. It's just how it is. You just don't know.
How exciting. Thank you, Antonio. I'm sure a lot of us will be on the lookout for it. And now we're on to the raffle, which is exciting. So do you want to ask I think we have 3 raffle prizes. 4?
It's 4. It's 4.
4. So it's 4. So we're going to have 4 questions. So I'll leave you up to decide what the questions are.
Okay. Woo. All right.
So just to remind everyone in the audience, you will type your answer into the chat. The first person to answer correctly will win one of the prizes. And they all are posters of Antonio's Joteria art that we will mail to you.
That's right.
So first question.
In what city was the Puñales based from? In what city did the Puñales get started? And you type in the answer. And I'm going to wait 10 seconds. If nobody fills it in, I'm going to ask something else about it. Nobody. Okay. The city is Guadalajara. What food did they sell? Tamales. Yes.
Yay, congrats.
Congrats.
Ariel, I will direct message you so I can get your information.
Cool.
Question number 2.
What number is associated with homosexuality in Mexico? Who got it first? Rebecca. Yes. Rebecca Garcia. And then Becca right after. Dang. So yeah, the number 41 is associated with homosexuality in Mexico. I was gonna say why, but that's kind of hard to text, no? What was the police force called that created this, that made this happen? It was, hint, the Spanish Who's gonna get it? Who's gonna get it? You're typing. No. It's the Spanish Inquisition. You know, they lasted 350 years. Brutal. What else can I ask about this? No. Xochipilli. Tell me one positive representation of Xochipilli. Just think about your gay friends. Your gay, fun, queer friends. And put in a word. And if you know this first part, Xochitl is Nahuatl. If you already know that, that's a representation. So you can write that in if you know the word in English or Spanish for Xochitl. Nobody! It's Xochitl is flower. So he's the prince of flowers or the flower kid. So a positive thing is poem, dance, song, beauty, games, youthfulness, and morning sun. So that's Xochipilli. Tell me one negative thing about Xochipilli. Who's gonna get it? Who's gonna get it? I think Becca's writing. What are you gonna write? What are you gonna write? Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Yes. Xochipilli also represents drugs. In his case, alcohol and mushrooms, magic Mexican mushrooms. So yes, that's him. A ver. Congrats. So far, that's 3, right? Tamales, 41, and drogas.
Yep, that's the 3rd one. So last question.
So last one. I'm gonna say, should it be a? Okay, it's gonna be something we covered. That's too much. Okay. How can I ask this? What does Machicuintla mean? What does Machicuintla mean? And don't be shy, you guys. Don't be shy. It is Mesoamerican, but it doesn't mean Mesoamerican. What is Machicuintla? And it has to do with those fruit. What did those fruit represent? Who?
Carlos, do you want to take a guess? Yeah, you.
Correct. Intersex.
Congrats.
Congrats. So the popular word is hermaphrodite, but as I said earlier, people are not biologically hermaphrodite. Snails are. So people are intersex because there's one genitalia that's more dominant than the other. Intersex. Good job, you guys. Good job.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Antonio. Thank you. So with that being said, we did go over a few minutes, but thank you everyone for your patience. Congrats to our raffle winners. I will be emailing you shortly so we can get your information to send you these fabulous posters and art that are part of Antonio's game. So that being said, please make sure to fill out the post-event survey, which is being posted in the chat so we can have more events like these. In the meantime, gracias, Antonio. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your beautiful artwork, and your process, which I think most people forget that there's a process behind any artwork or any kind of amazing outcome that you have. So thank you for being so honest and vulnerable about that process. We appreciate you, and we thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed this very much. Thank you guys.
Thank you.